cyber issues are always a top issue, right, for our field, working in public, in industry, and even in government. But what exactly is ethical hacking? This is the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast. Welcome back to the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast. I'm your host for all things tech, Sean Stein Smith, and I do a lot of work with the NJCPA at every level. I'm on the content advisory board, and I had the great opportunity this year to be in my first year on the board of trustees. And so I always am trying to talk about all things tech related, and also trying to really highlight the opportunities, challenges, and real upsides of how all of us, again, be it in industry, in public, government, nonprofit, can better understand and actually better make use of all of these awesome tools and ideas out there linked to everything IT linked. So I'm super happy to have here today on the October episode a real expert in everything cyber crime prevention, and honestly a true IT expert, Lisa Atkinson, who is, on top of being a managing partner in her own firm, is also heavily really integrated into every aspect of basically trying to bring IT expertise to a range of external activities, to colleges, economic councils, and all the rest. And so I'm truly honored to have you here today. And Lisa, I'll hand it over to you for a brief introduction, background of yourself and your firm.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I'm happy to be here. Zelvin Security started over 20 years ago when we realized that there was a need for the financial industry for a third-party expert opinion of the posture of the organizations. And so that's where our foundation of our company began. And today, we serve organizations in government, retail, healthcare, and of course, the financial services world. So we're really happy to be here with you today, and happy to get some of the questions answered that some of your listeners might have.
Awesome stuff, Lisa. Thank you. And actually, correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't October something to do with cybersecurity?
Yes, your timing is excellent. So it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and every year it's put on by CISA, and the idea is to help promote the cybersecurity culture within organizations. And so I know within our organization, we're a champion, and we're sharing resources and kind of bombarding our clients with information so that they can help build their culture within their organizations. But it's a concerted effort across the nation. So yes, it is. Excellent
timing then. Okay.
That's right.
and so as we're diving really right into it, to the heart of our conversation here, right? Because as a CPA, right, again, whether you're in industry, public, government, not-for-profit, you and your team and your internal colleagues are handling really a huge quantity of private data, confidential data, all types of information that really has to be kept, I would say, safe. But are there any, sort of pain points or top issues that are unique to folks working in accounting, finance, tax, as opposed to other areas?
There's a lot to this question. The first thing I want to think about is the accounting profession alone? Well, thinking about the different types of accounting professions, you have your tax accountants, you have, you have your CPAs, you have your bookkeepers, you have your audit team. And just like in your industry, in the cybersecurity industry, there's several different types of practitioners. So you have, your response team, you have your detection team, and you have your proactive team. And we sit on the proactive side. And we often look at, what cybersecurity means to all of the entities that we work with. And, we find that it means something different to different people. So in the accounting profession, someone in the day-to-day operations working with clients, they're thinking cybersecurity is MFA. It's making sure my clients are sending and receiving data back and forth securely. Business owners are thinking, well, I have a cyber insurance policy. That helps me. That's my cybersecurity. And then the IT team is thinking tools, detection. They're thinking antivirus, patching, those kinds of things. In our point of view, we're looking at how can a hacker gain access and steal data. But all of our definitions don't matter. It really matters to what the ethical hack or what the malicious hacker thinks is the definition of cybersecurity. And to them, it's a target, and a target that has a whole bunch of money behind it. And so the accounting profession is kind of at a disadvantage for a couple of reasons. First of all, hackers love data and they want to take advantage of stealing as much data as possible. So if they can get their hands on a firm that, let's say, has 10,000 records, those records for sale on the dark net would be worth about $1,200 each. So that's a pretty good payout, right? So that's a pretty good target. The other thing that happens is, hackers are opportunistic. And so who has the most money and who is defending themselves the most effectively? And those are some of the bigger organizations. And some accounting firms aren't in that top list of, the largest financial institutions or accounting firms. And so they fall in that small and medium-sized business category. And today, that's where hackers are spending their time because they can catch more fish in a shorter period of time. And then, of course, the accounting profession is built on trust. And so hackers, are creative in the fact that they can, if they're able to gain access, they're able to hold a business for ransom. Now, if the company has a great backup, the hackers want to double dip. And so now they're going to start to, ask that organization, oh, fine, if you don't want to pay me for this ransom, I will extort you by sharing this information on the dark net, or you pay me another lump sum. So, it's kind of the trifecta for the accounting profession. And those are really the three biggest issues, unfortunately.
Great.
Yes, I know.
And so to piggyback on a comment that you made there, Lisa, I have sort of a part A and a part B. Part A, could you quickly sort of summarize for us what the difference is between the deep web and the dark web? That's part A. And then part B, could you give us a quick definition as to actually what an ethical hacker is, as opposed to a bad hacker?
Right. So we'll start with the dark web, deep web question. I will just caution all of your listeners that is a place that they don't want their data and they don't want to go. And I think for clarity purposes, I think we'll leave it at that. But I think it's a place that no one wants to wind up.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And then, in terms of what an ethical hacker is or what that means, so it's basically a person who is hired by an organization to uncover the same security vulnerabilities that a malicious hacker would use to compromise the business. So it's basically practicing against the hackers in the wild. So our team and other ethical hacking teams mount an attack against an organization, use the same tools, the same techniques, the same tricks, and they try to see how much data they can get, if they can exfiltrate data. What could they do while they're in that network? Can they move from one area to another? Can they elevate their privileges? And what would it look like? And how long or how much sophistication would be required, to hold that business for ransom. But then the ethical hacking team takes it one more step, and that is to build the strategy for the organization to prioritize where their cyber risks are and what they need to do in order to protect themselves or reduce their risk. Cybersecurity, like we kind of talked about in the beginning, it's a big term. It's nebulous. It's like boiling the ocean. But the ethical hacking team's job is to kind of look at the whole picture and say, here are the kill chains, here are the opportunities. Now let's help build these protections in place so that it's more difficult for the hacker in the wild to gain access.
So it's almost like it's almost like in the Ocean's 12 and 11 movie, or 11 and 12 rather, and the whole team practices first on a sort of duplicate of the vault in question, and then has their plan to help counteract all of
Yeah.
the other tools there. Okay, but the
Yeah.
opposite, right?
Yeah. And I look at it like no team has ever won a high stakes game without practicing. And so if
Exactly.
you want to get better, what do? You practice. And so that's exactly what an ethical hacker does. They afford businesses the opportunity to do that in a safe way.
Mhm. And so, and in a anecdotal sense, right? I want to ask you to actually, point out any names here, but how common is it just overall for firms to engage with a ethical hacking team? Is it maybe half of firms do it, 20%? Is there any range in there?
So it really depends on the risk tolerance of the
Okay.
organization. Some organizations will call us to say, we just know that we are a target. We are concerned. Our reputation means a lot to us. And then we have other organizations who come to us to say, we had an event and we now need to know that we are secure, or our shareholders are asking us to perform a third party test to see what our posture looks like. So in any of those cases, that's when organizations are choosing to perform an ethical hacking engagement or practice. And in some cases, there's been some big attacks, and
Mhm.
organizations sometimes stand up and say, wow, that was kind of a shot across the bow, and we're not willing to take on this kind of risk. So we need to start to look at this. Unfortunately, not every organization feels that they have the budget for it. But they do once they, if they do get down that road of a bad day and an attack, then the money does come from somewhere. And unfortunately, it's much less expensive if they just work on it on the flip side, on the front end.
Absolutely, right. It's always better to be proactive on these issues.
It is.
Uh,
It is. Sure.
and so, adding on to that, right, Lisa, are there any best practices, right, for probably any company, but again, honing in here, right, on the accounting and broader financial services area, are there any best practices or sort of best ideas, best tips that you and your team have actively come across?
There are. So for
Oh,
any
excellent,
organization,
good, okay,
so
excellent.
for
Take notes,
any
everybody,
organ,
take notes.
that's
Take
right.
notes here.
Every organization, asset management is key. And this is where most companies get tripped up. What is on your network? What software is running? The permissions that everyone has. These are key pieces. And really having a very good understanding of what is on your network is very rudimentary, but at the same time, you can't defend what you don't know. So if you don't have some way of actively tracking this information, then you start there. For our clients, we always aim to help them improve their culture of cybersecurity. And so one of the things that our clients receive, and many organizations do this outside of their security practitioner, is to perform a security awareness training for the employees on a regular basis. So basically, our team builds a phishing email and we send it to our clients and their users to test them in a safe way to see whether or not they're able to spot a phishing email. And if they can't, give them the training and the tools to be able to help them where they are when they are there. So that's a great best practice. But from an accounting side, from the financial world, data is really the key. And in some of the clients that we've spoken to, they're worried because a client, say they have an outsourced client that has data and they need to share it with whomever within their organization. Sometimes clients will unknowingly send an email with personal data in it. And so everyone's kind of, cringes and wants to make sure that that doesn't happen in the future. And so, our recommendation there would be to develop some sort of portal and instruct your clients. The only way we receive information from you is through this portal. Put it in a sandbox, scrub it, make sure it doesn't have any malware in it. And then let it be known that any attachments won't be opened. Any of that won't make it to the inbox. of the person you're trying to reach. And that's for your safety. Tell clients that security is our priority and this is how we want to protect you. Please use our portal. It helps to reduce the risk of phishing emails that could come, to practitioners who are getting this private information. Once you open it, you're viewing these documents. They could have a picture, they could have malware in them, and also, it's helping to protect clients on the other end. And then, from an ethical hacking side, we often are in a business and we're looking at their email. We're able to gain access to it.
Mm-hmm.
We are able to see what they send, when they open messages. We can see everything within the user's account. If they're writing emails back and forth with passwords in them, we can see that as well. And so if a malicious hacker was to be lurking, quietly inside of an organization, they could certainly impersonate a user without that user realizing it. So that's why, everyone is told, oh, if there's a payment change or there's an account change, you have to pick up the phone and you have to use the primary source and call the person on the phone and make sure that they did truly authorize this change. And that's because of that business email compromise and impersonating users. So, following that policy that you must speak with a human to make these kinds of changes.
Mm-hmm. And you've actually pointed out twice during our conversation that it's really a sort of culture idea also, right? There's obviously the operational sort of nuts and bolts, right, of the ethical hacking, penetration testing, all the rest. But you've highlighted that it's a real culture thing, and I do think that all of that can get overlooked sometimes, right? In the tidal wave of headlines and tools and apps and bots out there, that really sort of the best way to have a good, safe operating environment is to make sure that everybody is, one, on that same page, and two, educated to actually use the tools correctly.
It's true. Hackers, they gain access in one of two ways. They either have to trick technology or they have to trick users. And so a lot of organizations spend a whole lot of money on technology, but are they spending an equal amount of energy on training their users, which is really the key to culture for sure.
Yeah, excellent question there, Lisa.
What's that saying that culture eats strategy for lunch? So
yeah, there we go. Yeah. Nice. I'm gonna borrow that actually. Yeah. And so, the sort of the whole tool side of this cyber landscape, right? Everybody in business and anybody in finance and accounting over the last couple of years has honestly had to pull forward probably between 5 and 7 years of IT upgrades and an IT headset, right? How they practice and how they operate. And I'm personally heavily interested in anything to do with either blockchain, crypto, or AI, RPA, automation tools of all of that kind. But if I were to ask you to boil down maybe the top 2 or 3 tools or sort of categories of tools that are having the highest impact out there right now, are there any 2 or 3?
So we have seen a real shift in the detection tools that organizations are using. So, now they have host-based detections and network-based detections, and they're identifying that we're in the network and we're doing, what we need to do during our testing phase. So I would say, the tools in the defense world and the React world are definitely improving. From a proactive side, our tools are constantly changing because in order to stay one step ahead of the hackers or to stay in sync with them and use their same tools and techniques, our tools change all the time. Going back to the first part of our conversation, we were talking about there's different types of teams or practitioners within cybersecurity. So you have your defense team, you have your reaction team, and you have your proact team. All of them do have, sets of tools. But the key with each of those tools is they typically have some sort of human interaction with them. And what sometimes companies forget is that the tools are not the end all be all. Security comes in layers. And so let's take, for example, a network-based intrusion tool. Let's say we're in a network, we're in there mimicking a malicious hacker, and all of a sudden the blue team will call us to say, all right, that's right. You sounded the alarms, we see you. And we expect that, but 9 times out of 10, we are already able to do what we need to do. We've already compromised. We're already in there. We've already found the weakness, and in many cases able to, take the data or, move laterally or whatever it was that we wanted to do. And so, the key thing to think about here is the tools can let someone know that there is an alert, but that still means that there's a risk. And if that tool isn't working, or the hackers in the wild come up with a way to, circumvent that tool and resignature that tool so that they aren't detected, or resignature their work so that the tool doesn't detect them, then the risk is still there. I always equate it to the metaphor of you're driving down the road, you have one of those smart cars that lets somebody know if you've been in an accident. So you go off the road, the alarm goes off, you're already in the accident, it's already over. And so that's kind of the way that we look at the blue team tools. You have to take care of the risk or the root cause versus, just slapping a tool on it.
Makes sense, right? That there's always a important role for the human oversight, human monitoring of the tools.
For sure. Yes.
And to try to wrap up our conversation, and obviously any conversation on this topic could go for hours. But how do the experts like you and your team stay up to date on all of these threats and changes and just all of that change? How do you and your team manage that?
It's funny you ask that. So, if you think about the tax law, or you think about any law, you get due notice, right? And you know that something is changing. And so then you become aware of it and you educate yourself and you do some research on it. We don't have that luxury in our line of work. There isn't due notice, and no one does the research for you unless it's gone a little while, and things have been happening for a little bit. So our team, we're part of a big community of ethical hackers, and it's really a big but small community of back channels of people who, something new comes out, we're all talking about it. We're, texting each other. We're on social media talking about it. And we're sharing information. There might be a threat hunting team working on something. They're posting information on, these channels to make sure that everybody else is staying up to date with it. Our team does research on a regular basis. I mean, something new comes out, we want to use it, immediately to be able to stay on that bleeding edge. And so, we're doing our own research, and we have some publications that we read. Hacker News is a good one. There's different CVEs that come out. And then, of course, all hackers love conferences and other opportunities to meet up. So there's certainly that avenue to get information as well.
Excellent. Well said, Lisa. And Lisa, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. It was a real treasure trove of information and a real inside look into an area that I know everybody as ACPA knows that it's important, but honestly probably don't have sort of any inside access or a inside expert to actually go to. And so honestly, it was a real pleasure having you here, and I'm sure our members will have some follow-up questions for you. Absolutely.
Well, great. Here we try to take the human side of the cybersecurity ethical hacking world and help businesses, organizations, but people elevate their security posture. So we welcome questions. Thank you very much.
All right, Lisa, thank you again, really. And for just a few quick housekeeping items here at the end of our podcast episode, If you have not joined yet, I highly encourage you all to join the NJCPA Emerging Technologies Interest Group, and that's on njcpa.org/groups, and all of our episodes of the NJCPA Issues Watch podcast, tech and otherwise, are all online at njcpa.org/podcast. Thanks.